the people like if you go to therapy, like they'll
Yeah.
always ask like, oh, like it's because of your childhood, like something it happened when you were a kid that
Yeah.
like made you this way or whatever. Do you feel like your childhood affected who like your mental health now, or like the things that you struggle with now? Like,
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you said that.
in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Joe's Funland. I'm your host, Joe Ho, and today I'm joined with a very special guest. He really needs no introduction. If you know me, you know him. My one and only brother, Justin Ho.
What's up?
What's up, man?
Glad to finally be on this podcast.
Yeah. We also have a special sponsored by my cousin, Marty, who bought me some beers. So
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
No free ads.
No free ads, though. No free ads, yeah. But shout outs to Marty. All right, cheers.
Cheers. Oh, it's pretty good. What do you think?
Not bad. Not bad. I thought it was going to be weird because it said coconut on the website.
I know. I thought the coconut was going to
was
throw me
like,
off too, but
ew.
you don't really get much of it.
But yeah, it's smooth. It's not
It's
as bitter
smooth.
as I thought it would be for an IPA.
Yeah, no,
I thought
for
it would
sure.
be more hoppy, but it's not. That's like the hoppiness is not so much in your face.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So, for people who don't know you,
Mm-hmm.
can you give a quick introduction to you and your profession?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So as
Who are
you
you?
mentioned, I'm Justin. I am your brother, but I'm also a licensed professional counselor. So I do a lot of work with couples, and I do a lot of couples counseling and relationship distress. So I work with a lot of couples who, want to figure out what's going on between them, why they're fighting so much, or why they're, not communicating the way that they want to or they should be, and, try to help them sort it out and figure out what's going on.
okay. And so, for my audience, you guys know I've also talked a little bit about mental health and especially men's mental health on here. And my brother is a certified therapist. So, of course, we're going to have to talk a little bit about that. First, I want to get into, though, is you were recently featured in a CNN article.
Yeah, I was mentioned in a CNN article, say that.
You were quoted.
I was quoted.
You were quoted.
That's true. That's true.
All right. Tell me the story behind that. Like, how did that all happen? What was it about? Like,
Yeah. So one day, my partner who works in PR, she said, hey, a journalist that I work with often is looking for therapists to quote for an article. Would you be interested? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I've never done that before. Like, I don't know what that would look like or what I would need to do. And she's like, it'll be fine. Like, I've worked with a bunch of people who have like been on these articles before. It's not a big deal. She'll just ask you a couple questions and, just take bits and pieces of what you say and put it in the article or whatever. So I was like, okay, sure. That's not a big deal. I had no idea what the article was or like where it was going to be featured. I just knew that a journalist was going to call me and interview me for a little bit about silent divorces. And that was that. So the journalist reached out to me and she's like, hey, want to set up a time to meet and just see if you could jump on a quick call. It's only take like 10, 15 minutes. So I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's no big deal. So like we set up a time to meet. We do the interview. Everything goes well, just talking about, just answering the questions that she has and all that stuff. And then she's like, all right, perfect. Well, this article is actually going to be on CNN, so I'll let you know when it runs out. I was like, oh my God, it's not going to be on CNN? What the heck?
okay.
And so I was like, okay, I guess that's going to happen. So yeah, a couple weeks later, we find the article and it says Justin Ho, licensed professional counselor, and have a couple quotes in there, and that was that.
Yeah. That was super cool, actually. When
Yeah.
when I heard about it and then I saw the article, I was actually like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, I was really
I appreciate
proud
it.
of you.
Yeah. I had no idea that was going to happen, but it happened. So
Nice.
Yeah.
Were you nervous when you were talking to the interviewer, like the journalist, or you're like, oh, what should I say? Because you knew you were going to be quoted,
yeah.
but you just didn't know, like,
Well, that's not true. I didn't know it was going to be quoted because sometimes they're like, yeah, well, ask you a couple questions, and then depending on how she writes the article and stuff like that, they'll like use the quotes that match with what the message that she's trying to say or whatever. So it was just like, it just felt like answer a couple questions. So I mean, naturally I was nervous at first because it's like, I've never done this before, and like I didn't know what she was going to ask me or whatnot. But once we got rolling, it felt pretty normal, and I've talked to people for a living, so
That's fair.
it ended up pretty smooth.
Okay. And then what was your reaction when you like saw the article?
It was like pretty surreal. I'm not gonna lie. It was like, cause like, I mean, obviously CNN's a big network, right? And so, I never thought like I would be a part of that, much less be quoted in something like that, So it was like really weird to see that like, like the stuff that I've been working on, and the studying that I did and the counseling that I've done has all kind of not culminated to this moment, but has like contributed to me getting something like this.
So one of the questions that I wanted to get into is like, so obviously like with therapy and being a licensed mental health professional, like where do you want to see your career going?
Currently, I work in private practice. So what that means is it's what you would normally think about when you think about therapy is you go into someone's office, you sit with them on the couch. It's kind of weird if you lay down, so don't do that. But
I did it one time at my therapist office. I did.
What happened?
But we were cool at that point. Like that was like my fourth, or no, not fourth. It was probably like my sixth or seventh session or something like that. So we were already pretty cool. And then I was just like, I'm gonna get comfortable. And he was like, it's cool, just do it.
Yeah. It's if you have rapport and if you've met with them a couple times, then sure, whatever, But the first time you come in and you lay down, it's like, what are we doing? Like, let's sit up, let's talk face to face first. But so I work in private practice, so essentially, it's meet with clients or patients, whatever you want to call them, face to face, and kind of work with them for an hour and talk about what's going on for them. And honestly, I love that. It's different every day. You see different people, you hear about different experiences, and you really get to kind of go along the journey with the person who's sitting across from you. So in terms of like where I want to see my career going and all that stuff, I think like personally, like I feel like I'm kind of there in terms of like where I want to go. And then everything on top of that is just kind of a bonus, So like stuff like the CNN article or like doing more advocacy stuff or whatever, it's kind of just like, I'm happy to do this on top of what I'm already doing, but I love what I do. So, yeah.
I think we talked about this a little bit before in private too, but like you've always kind of been you've always kind of wanted to do something like this in this field.
Yeah, I think I've known pretty early on. Like, as early as I can remember, it's just like in, I don't know, like middle school, definitely high school, I just like noticed that a lot of my friends were coming up to me and just being like, hey, like, I'm kind of dealing with something, or there's like something that's bugging me. Like, can we talk about it? Or like, would you be open to like listening and like giving your advice? So I was like, yeah, like, sure, you're my friend. Like, I know the situation, or kind of know the situation. So let's hear it and let's try to figure out what's going on, And so obviously that's not like a direct translation to what therapy is, but like it kind of piqued my interest in like letting me know that, like I'm capable of doing this, and like I, maybe have a knack for it. So I kind of just pursued that and like wanted to see where that was going to take me. So, I did my undergrad in psychology, and then I went on to get my master's in clinical mental health counseling.
Hold on, I can hear all of it. Wait, okay, let's run that back. Okay, so
where do you want to cut?
What was I gonna say? Well, the question was, so you've always kind of like, we talked about this before, like more in private, off camera too, but like you've always kind of had a idea that you wanted to be in this field, or you kind of had some kind of speculation that like this was kind of going to be your thing?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think even thinking back to like being in middle school or high school, even just like having a lot of friends come to me, just like wanting to seek my advice, just coming in to say like, hey, like I'm kind of dealing with something, or this issue is really bothering me. Like, can I just vent to you? Or, you know, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. And so, you know, I was always happy to like sit down with them and just like kind of figure out like, hey, like, what do you think about this? What's going on around you? How do we, you know, kind of solve this and figure out, you know, what the best path forward is, you know? And so, yeah, I think that obviously, you know, is not a direct translation to
Okay, it's fine. Just keep going. Just keep going.
Okay.
It'll be fine.
Yeah. So yeah, obviously that's not a direct translation to therapy, but it definitely, you know, like sort of piques my interest into saying like, oh, like this is something that I could do. This is something that like I feel like I have a knack for. So let's see where it goes. Let's see where it takes me. And then I think in addition to that, like this is actually something that that mom wanted to do when she was younger. And so she told me about that, about, you know, how she was always interested in counseling. And, you know, even to this day, she does kind of, you know, what I was saying, like she talks to a lot of her friends and, you know, works with them and listens to them about, you know, what they're kind of struggling with, and, you know, kind of sits there with them and helps to, you know, be there for them. And so I think even just, you know, having that as an example growing up as well, really kind of solidified for me, like, oh, like this is something that feels, you know, useful and beneficial, and feels fulfilling too, you know? So yeah, I kind of just chased that and just tried to see where it would take me. So, you know, I got, I did my bachelor's in psychology, and then I went to a master's for clinical mental health counseling. And the more I went into it, the more I was like, oh, like this is really cool. This is really interesting. And, you know, I feel like this is kind of where I'm being led. And like, I really saw a future in it for myself, you know? And yeah, to this day, you know, I still love the aspect of like sitting down with someone, unpacking what's going on for them, and, you know, trying to help them, you know, find the best way forward. So, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you didn't say you got into it because I traumatized you. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that might be a whole nother podcast. So
we'll get into that when we have Vanya on here.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Let me ask you this then. So like you were kind of always there for your friends when they needed like someone to hear them out, or someone who just needed someone to vent to. Even before you got licensed, before you even got like studied and got your degrees and stuff like that, do you think that anybody could be a therapist?
This might sound like a cop-out answer, but yes and no. I think everybody has the skills to let me rephrase that. So I think everybody is capable of listening, everybody is capable of empathy, everybody is capable of problem solving. I think what separates, you know, just talking with your friends versus therapy and counseling is that, you know, in counseling, it's more so, you know, coming from a third party or an unbiased person or position, right? You know, like if I were to say, talk to you about like dating issues or something, right? Obviously, like being my brother, I'm going to pull for you way more than I'm going to, you know, advocate for the other person, because I know you, I love you, I, you know, care about you. And so obviously I want what's best for you, right? And so when we talk about like giving advice to your friends and, you know, seeing that as counseling, I think that's where it kind of gets blurry in the sense of like, yeah, you could be giving good advice and you could be, you know, helping that person out. But at the same time, it's like you have a bias, you have some sway in that person's life as well. And so going to counseling and doing therapy, you know, kind of eliminates that as much as possible to say like, hey, this person doesn't quite know you. This person isn't, you know, biased in one way or another. And so they can give you more objective feedback and say, hey, you know, like, I understand that you see it this way, but it sounds like, you know, this is also causing this problem, or it sounds like, you know, you might be running into this issue as well, right? And so they're able to give you more of a broad perspective and overview of maybe what's going on versus, you know, if it was me and you, it's like, no, I'm fighting for you no matter what, you know?
Given all that, then, if like, so one of the things for me, I tried therapy before, and I went through one therapist that was not a great experience and one that was a really good experience.
Yeah.
What do you think makes a good therapist? Or like, what would you look for if you're like, oh, I'm trying to get into therapy, or I need to find a therapist? Like, what do you think in your eyes would make a good therapist?
Yeah. So I think, you know, with those broad strokes, right, I think that's an important part of it, right? You know, like, you want a therapist who's empathetic. You want someone who wants to listen to you and cares about what's going on for you, right? And, you know, is able to, you know, sit there with you while you're, you know, unpacking and unloading all this stuff. But what makes a good therapist from a not so good therapist, I think, really just depends on who's looking, right? And I'm curious for you, you know, what made your first therapist not so great of a fit versus your other therapist?
Well, okay, I'll tell you this, and no shade. I'm not trying to, you know, talk shit.
For sure.
Yeah, the first therapist I sought out, it was I was going through like a breakup period of my life, and I was like, man, I probably need some help. I was like, it was rough.
Yeah.
And then so I went to go find a therapist, and there was this one. She was like an older white lady, probably like in her 60s or something like that. And I think some of it had to do with, there was a little bit of cultural difference of like, well, not even culture, but like just life stage difference, where like she was a older,
She's an old white
lady, and I was a younger Asian man.
Right.
Like we live in different worlds, right?
Yeah.
So it was hard, I think, for her to understand a lot of the things where I'm coming from,
Yeah.
or like some of the way that I see things, like. But then also, like, it was just tough because I would tell her stuff, and so my first session, right, it's kind of an introductory session. We
Yeah.
sit down, we're in her office. She's like, okay, so like, we're just getting to know each other. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me why you wanted to go to therapy, or why you are looking for a therapist, right? So I tell her my whole story of like, oh yeah, you know, like, this is actually my first time trying therapy. I'm going through like a breakup right now, and it's just been really tough on my mental health, and I wanted to give this a try and see if it would help me, whatever. I tell her the details of my situation and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So she goes, okay, cool. That's our time today. I'm glad we did this. Let's set up a schedule for next time, and we can meet up again and talk. So we set up the schedule, blah, 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 put it on the calendar. Okay. We come to session 2. We sit down in our office again. And then she goes, okay, so remind me again what we talked about last time. And I was like, okay, I mean, sure. So then I recapped basically everything that we did. And mind you, these are all 45-minute sessions, right? So I recapped everything that I taught to her last time. That was at least like 15, 20 minutes of the session. So I only have 25 minutes left.
Yeah.
And then she goes, okay, tell me a little bit more. And I'm like, okay, I'll elaborate a little bit more about how I feel, whatever. And she goes, okay, well, I think that's our time, you know? And so I was like, can you like give me some advice? Like, can you tell me something?
Right.
But she just like, I don't know. I feel like she didn't ask me good questions.
Yeah.
A lot of it was just, how does that make you feel? Which I'm like, okay, well, I could have, me and Marco could go to the bar and drink and do that. Like, what I want is someone who will give me, like, you don't have to tell me how to, like, exactly, like, word for word what to do, but, like, give me some advice. Like, give me some feedback instead of just, like, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Like,
it sounds like she didn't dive into it with you.
Yeah.
She was just like, oh, tell me, and then tell me more, and tell me more.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, oh, like, what's going on underneath that?
Exactly. So it was, I'm just like, give me, like, bitch, give me some advice. Like, tell me some feedback, anything.
Right.
Like, I felt like I was talking to a wall or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, the bartender would give me better advice than this. So I was,
Yeah.
and then so I was like, you know what, maybe we just need to give it some time. Like, and maybe, maybe it'll just take, this is our second session. We're
Yeah.
still getting to know each other.
Sure.
Maybe she just wants to get a better understanding of the situation before she says anything, right? Because, you want to understand the full picture before you give advice.
Of course.
Third session comes. So remind me what we talked about again last time?
Yikes.
I wanted, oh my God, I
Yeah.
wanted to punch the wall. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to need therapy from this therapist. So I was like, this is not working for me. So after
Yeah,
that third
that's
session, I was like, I think we need to take a break.
Yeah.
I don't think this is working out.
Yeah.
So then I didn't do therapy for like another like 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then I went through another breakup situation again. You know.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
So then the new therapist I started seeing, I was like, you know what? So actually, I'll tell you the story too.
Okay.
I was going on a date with this girl,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I might have talked about this on the podcast already before too. But I was going on a date with this girl, and we were talking, and so somehow we got into the topic of therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And then so she's like, "Oh, do you do therapy?" And I'm like, "No, but my brother's a therapist, whatever." So I'm like, I kind of know about the industry, and I know about it, but I just didn't have a good experience with my own. And then she was like, "Oh, well, if you're ever interested in trying it out again, like I know some people who are local, and obviously I can't go to you to be my therapist because conflict of interest, but
Right.
she was like, if you did want to look at something, like I have a lot of people like connects in that industry too. So I was like, okay. And then so afterwards I was like, maybe I should check it out again, because I was going through more shit in my head, and I was like, what, maybe I'll give it another go. But this time, so the girl I was talking to at the time, where she was Asian, and then so her connects were all Asian as well. So then the way I got plugged into this guy, he was part of this group. They're all Asian, so I was like, okay. And not saying that like she has to be Asian or whatever.
Of course, yeah.
But
But it helps.
I was just like, yeah. Well, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that.
Okay.
And we can get into that later too.
Yeah.
But so the new guy, the new therapist I started seeing, he's like I think he's 40, and he's like a Taiwanese American dude. He loves basketball, and like, so we kind of connected a little bit more, just because one, we're dudes.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you kind of already get half of the aspects where I'm coming from, especially if I'm talking to you about like relationships, right? Because that's a whole, guys and girls version, like how they see relationships is way different, right? So that already helped a lot. And then, just him being younger. I don't think the Asian thing really had anything to do with my personal situation, but just him being younger, like not an older person. Like I think that helped me talk to him a little bit more about like what I was going through. And then what I really liked about him was that like he actually gave me like exercises to do, and like tools in my tool belt to like when I'm feeling anxiety, like he taught me like, oh, here's some things you can actually physically do to help you like manage your emotions so it doesn't get out of control. And I was like, this is what I needed. Like not, how does that make you feel? Like, so
You needed something tangible first, before you could get into more of that.
Yes. So that made my experience a lot better. I started seeing him a lot more. And then, so that was my experience with therapy, which I think that so that's why at the very beginning I said, I'm not trying to throw shade, because I think maybe some people, they do need that someone to just say, how does that make you feel? Because nobody ever asked them that, you know? But for me, what made a good therapist was somebody who actually gave me like things that I can do. So I can like not, just talk about it, but I can do something about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's what made the difference for me.
Yeah, for sure. And so I think just hearing that, right? Like I think it really kind of checks off a lot of the boxes in my head of like, I think what makes a good therapist is if they're a good therapist for you. And what I mean by that is like if they're a good fit, right? Like you were saying, you were looking for someone who would give you more of the tangible skills and like things to actually do and to implement in your life, versus just like exploring and processing and, just like identifying your feelings, right? Like not that that's not helpful, but it just wasn't helpful for you in that moment, right? And then that on top of like, he was a younger guy and he, you know, maybe had similar interests, you know, like that isn't like what defines a good therapist, but I'm sure it helped to say, oh, like this guy gets it, or like this guy, I feel like I can be comfortable with him. You know what I mean? So I think that's what it kind of comes down to in terms of like finding a good therapist for yourself is like, oh, like, does this person get me? Does this person like have the same kind of mindset as what I'm looking for? Right. Because for me personally, like when I do like these consultations for new clients, a lot of times, what I try to ask them is like, oh, have you ever been in therapy before? Like, what do you feel like worked? What did you feel like didn't work? And some people would be like, yeah, like, kind of like similar to your experience, right? Like, oh, my therapist, like, helped me to, identify certain things and like, pick out what I was feeling, but like, I didn't know really what to do with that. Right. And so, for me, that kind of tells me that, okay, like you want more hard skills, you want more things to like do, and you want homework, or you want, something to actually like get the ball rolling. Right. And so, yeah, it's like being able to kind of identify that, on the client side, like being able to understand that for yourself, like, oh, okay, like this is actually what I'm looking for, or this is what I think would be helpful for me, and being able to communicate that to your therapist and see if they can, kind of meet that need. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do people, I mean, I guess like, obviously you can't talk about specific cases, but
Sure.
like in general, like, are people usually like, do they know what they want, or are you
Sometimes.
tending to like run into more people where they're like just like flailing for help and they're like they don't know what they want?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely get a mix of both, right? You have people who know what they're looking for and like are already kind of solution driven and are saying, hey, this is the goal I'm working towards. How do we get there? I don't really know. I need someone to help me get there, right? And then there's other people, especially working with couples, there's, people who come in and say, oh, well, my partner dragged me here, so I don't really know what I'm doing here, right? And so I think like it's helpful to know what you want and know what you're looking for, but it's not a requirement. I think as long as you're willing to try, and as long as you're willing to, put one foot forward and, walk through the door, I tell clients this all the time, like that's the hardest step, is walking through the door of the office, right? Or to sit on the couch. It shows that you're willing to be here, you're willing to try something, and you're willing to, see where it takes you, right? Whether we get there or not, it kind of depends, right? You never really know. But as long as you're willing to try, and as long as there's a part of you that wants to make that change, then, that's all we really need. And then we can kind of go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you. That was for me, like before I started therapy ever, that was the hardest thing for me, was just getting in the door, because I was scared.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Like for me, like being a therapist, it's kind of ironic, but like for the longest time, there was a small part of me that was like, oh man, like going to my own therapy is really hard, because like it's weird being on the other side of the couch saying like, oh, now I'm here like unloading all of my stuff to this person that I just met, right? And yeah, it's scary, it's vulnerable, it's, it feels unnatural a little bit, but at the same time, right, like that willingness to change is what hopefully gives us the courage to say, hey, this is scary, but at the end of the day, I think it'll be worth it. So
I think that fear is also a good motivator as well.
Yeah.
And like, because for me personally, like a lot of my motivation comes from negativity. So like if I'm afraid of going to therapy, but what took me to therapy was that I just hated my life so much to the point where I was like, okay, something needs to change. So I think that fear is actually, in a way, is kind of healthy for some people, where it's like you're so afraid of it, but then you have to like have all that negativity where you're like, okay, this is even like the way my life is now is even worse than
Right.
my fear of trying to get help, like professional help.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, they even teach us this in school, but like, I know anxiety is like a really big kind of like buzzword nowadays, but a little bit of anxiety is actually good,
Yeah.
like obviously you don't want to be like high strung anxiety where it's like debilitating and you can't do anything and you're over here hyperventilating in the corner, right? But no anxiety is also not good, because then you are sedentary and you're, content, and, there's no reason to do anything, right? But, if there's a little bit of fear, if there's a little bit of anxiety, it probably means there's room for growth, And so that little bit of anxiety is the push that sometimes we need to say, okay, this is scary, this is outside of my comfort zone, but it might be worth doing,
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the biggest area that you feel like you've grown ever since actually like being in school versus actually starting practicing?
That's a great question.
Because obviously when you're in school, right, they teach you certain things and you learn by the book, but then that like life experience is a whole nother world, right? So
Yeah.
it's like
Right.
some things you'll encounter in the field, you'll be like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. That I think, kind of thinking on it, the biggest thing that maybe sticks out to me right now is like there's no singular right answer, or there's no like textbook answer, right? Obviously, like comparing school to like actual practice, is like school, you learn all of the theories, you learn all of the modalities, you learn all of the the diagnoses and what to look for and things like that, and that's really helpful as a guideline, as a tool to kind of reference. But once you get out there, it's kind of just, it's more, the thing that's more important is the person that's right in front of you, and when it comes to that, there is no textbook for that. It's about, hey, like, what's going on for you, like what is causing you some trouble, and how does that feel for you, And if anything, like, you're the textbook in that case. Like, you have all the answers, you're the one who's experiencing all those things, you're the one who's feeling that distress or that anxiety or that depression or whatever that is, and I'm not, So for me, it's like I'm trying to learn and understand what that feels like for you, so that I can help kind of work through that with you, right? If I don't understand what you're going through, then, I can tell you, oh, you should, take a walk every day, or you should, take this pill or whatever. But like, that might not actually help you, right? That actually might hurt you. So for me, it's about saying, hey, like, I want to understand everything about you, and I want to understand what you're experiencing and what you're going through, so that I can, walk alongside you and say, hey, like, let's try this, or it sounds like this could be really helpful. Like, have you thought about doing it that way, right? And letting you decide, oh, yeah, I never thought about it that way. That could be really helpful. Why don't I try that? Or thinking like, oh, I've tried that before, but it hasn't really worked. And then we can say, okay, well, maybe we can try something similar to that, right? That actually fits your lifestyle a little bit better, rather than kind of forcing something on you that isn't going to work.
Yeah. One question that I did have for you, and we can cut this out too if it gets too deep or whatever, but obviously, like, if you ever watch movies or whatever, one of the most popular questions is, how did your childhood affect your or like the people, like, if you go to therapy, like, they'll always ask like, oh, like, it's because of your childhood, like something it happened when you were a kid that like made you this way or whatever. Do you feel like your childhood affected your mental health now, or like the things that you struggle with now? Like,
yeah. Well, it's funny because you said that, we don't have to go too deep if you don't want to, but I'm here saying we don't have to go too deep if you don't want to, because I think the way that we kind of grew up impacts a lot of like how I see myself and like how I kind of operate a little bit,
Interesting.
So I guess for context, right? And cut this out if this is not the kind of image that you want either. But I think growing up, it always kind of felt like you were sort of, like out there trying to find yourself, right? I'm sure. But to me, what it kind of looked like was, oh, you were just doing your own thing and like doing whatever the hell you wanted, and and just kind of messing around or whatever, right? And so for me, the way I kind of received that, not just from you, but also from like how mom and dad reacted to you was that like it felt like they wanted to kind of like contain you a little bit more, or like we're always concerned about you. And so for me, I was like, oh well, I don't want to add on to that, and so let me like just be here in the corner so that, you know, they can kind of focus on what they need to, and I'm not disrupting or I'm not adding on to anything that's going on. And so I think for me, like kind of growing up like that and internalizing that for myself, I kind of, I don't know, I just became this kind of person that like goes with the flow and like doesn't really like, doesn't like speak up for myself a bunch, or like disrupts anything, right? And so like, yeah, it's helpful in some ways because it's like, oh yeah, like Justin's so laid back, or like Justin is like the golden child or whatever you want to call him. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I don't feel like anybody really like thinks about me, or like, you know, cares what I think. So I'm just gonna like kind of ride that wave until something happens, you know. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was kind of a broad question, so any answer, like, there's no right or wrong answer.
yeah.
Yeah, and just to let you know, people do think about you, and you're
thank you.
when you're not in the room. People do still talk about you all the time, and I'm not.
Yeah, they
like,
talk shit.
No,
I'm just like,
like I'm not just saying this just to say this, but like, you don't know how many times I've gotten like, oh, you're Justin's brother, and they just talk to me. They talk to me about you, like people think about you. So
Yeah.
yeah.
thanks. Well, same for you. Everywhere I go, like it's not even here in Atlanta, but like I'll go to random places and I'll see someone and they're like, "Are you Joe?" I'm like, "No." "Are you Joe's brother?" "Yeah." "Oh my God, Joe's so great." And they'll just like go on this whole thing about like, "Oh, like I remember." I'm like, cool. Yeah, I'm his brother. Cool.
I get the same. I get the same thing with you.
Yeah.
I get the same thing with you.
I don't know.
I do.
But sure. I believe you.
But no, the reason why I posed that question too is because me and my therapist, we kind of got into it a little bit in one of our sessions about childhood and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But for me, I told him too. I was like, I don't know, like, so obviously, like, if you had a terrible childhood and you went through a lot of trauma as a child, yeah, you're gonna be a little fucked up, right? Just to be blunt.
Sure.
But for me, I was telling my therapist, I don't know why I'm depressed. I don't know why I have anxiety. I had a great childhood. Like, we grew up, like, we weren't rich, but we were definitely at least like upper middle class.
Sure.
Like, I had two parents, like, we were a 2-parent household. They loved each other. They took us to Disney World. Like, we had a basement in our house growing up. So it's like, we weren't poor. We
Yep.
had all the toys we could have wanted. I had friends growing up.
Yeah.
Like, I had you to play with and like Vanya to hang out with. Like, there was nothing in my childhood that was like bad. Like,
Yeah.
we didn't like, yeah, we got punished, but like, we never got like beat. Like,
Right.
like, you know, it wasn't like dad was like beating us. Like,
Right.
like, I don't know. I had a great childhood. So I was like, I don't know why I'm so depressed. I have no reason to be. Like, I had such a great life. Like, I don't know. So I was just curious about your thoughts on how you viewed it, because we grew up together. So like,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's just interesting to see if we have like different views on the same thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, what did you uncover with your therapist on why you might be depressed because of your childhood or something?
Well, he said, well, maybe it's not your childhood. Maybe it's just something else. And I was like, but don't therapists always say it's something with your childhood? But
Yeah.
maybe it's not. Maybe I had a perfect childhood.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't know. I genuinely cannot think of like anything that was really that bad in childhood.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be like this big traumatic moment of like, oh, you lose a parent, or you like get in this car accident, or, you know, someone gets sick or something like that. Like, obviously those all like impact you really like pretty intensely. But like, even what I was kind of just saying, right, of like, oh, like I sort of like minimized myself because I thought that was what was best for the sake of the family, has impacts on me today, right? And I'm almost 30 years old, right? And so it's like little things that we don't always notice or that we don't always register, but are still there, right? And so I think that's an important part of therapy too, is like it gives you a space to be able to open that part up in terms of like, and I know that sounds really scary, but at the same time, it's kind of like you're able to find more of the answers if you're able to kind of understand not just what happened to you, but how that impacted you, right? Because like you said, right? Yeah, like for the most part, looking back, we truthfully, we did have a really good childhood, right? We had, a lot of things. We, went to great schools. We, had our parents provide for us, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, it doesn't mean that we were without struggles one way or another, right? Even if they weren't financial struggles, maybe they were emotional struggles. If they weren't emotional struggles, maybe they were, relational struggles, whatever it might be, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like those little things that we don't really think about or that we don't, always identify can still linger and last with us going into adulthood or beyond.
I have a few cards that we're going to do. These are just a bunch of conversation cards.
Cool.
I'm going to let you pick one.
All right.
Whatever you want.
This one looks cool. Do I got to read it?
Yeah.
All right.
What did you pick?
Speaking of childhood, what is one childhood memory that always makes you smile?
Do you have an answer?
I'm thinking. Do you have anything?
I do.
Go for it.
All right. I remember that we used to, so like for the audience, we used to share a room, right? And then we would have both of our beds is on one side, and then there's this little like, I don't know, like the space, the floor between, so we could get to each bed, right? And then we used to crawl. So we had a blanket, and then the blanket had a cover, right? And then so we used to crawl into the blanket cover, and we would push each other until somebody fell off of the bed.
It was like a cage match in there.
Yeah, dude, we were legit wrestling, but we couldn't see where the edge of the bed was because we were under the cover.
That's what made it fun, though.
Yeah, somebody would fall
just out of nowhere. But it was funny because sometimes if you were close enough, if one person fell, the rest of the blanket would also fall, and then the other person would fall with you, and now you're both on the floor, like flailing around on the floor in this blanket.
And you can't find the exit either because you're both trapped. We were so stupid.
That was a good
Why
one.
did we do that?
That's a good one.
Yeah, that was funny.
Oh, man. Yeah. One childhood memory that always makes me smile is sort of similar, is like, and I don't know, we were weird kids growing up, but like sometimes we would all like sleep in the same bed and have like a mini sleepover. And then the way it was ordered, it was always Vanya on the outside, I was in the middle, and Joey was on the edge of the bed close to the wall. And then every morning, without fail, he would always end up in the crack between the bed and the wall. But we would always, at night, like stay up and just play Would You Rather for like hours. Like, I'm not even kidding, hours. We would come up with the most ridiculous stuff and just like ask the stupidest questions. And we would just keep cracking up and like adding on top of that. It's just the most ridiculous thing ever.
Oh, yeah. That was good.
Yeah.
We were like sleep deprived and delirious by the end of it, but it just got
that's
funnier.
What made it more fun, is the delirious.
On my podcast, if you watched any of the episodes, we always end with all of our guests. I just have them share 1 minute, one quick thing of a life lesson or some kind of words of wisdom that you'd like to impart on me, on the audience, or anything that you feel like is something that you'd like to share.
I think one thing that I've personally been reflecting on and trying to grow in more, and, kind of mentioned this before, but it's, just being able to not just be yourself, but to also like stand up for yourself. I think so many times for me, like I've invalidated myself in saying like, oh, like I don't want to get in a fight with someone, so I'm just gonna like roll over and say sorry, and hopefully we can move on. Or think like, oh, like this person probably doesn't want to hang out with me, so like I am not gonna reach out to them because they're probably not gonna want to do whatever. And so like I think that's something that I've been really trying to impart on myself is like just one, like do the thing, right? Like whatever it is, like just try something new, do something different. Like I think you mentioned on a previous podcast, I recently moved to New York, right? And never in a million years would I have ever thought I would end up there, because it was too cramped, too dirty, too busy, too loud, and just like I felt like it wasn't my vibe. But now being there for a little bit, it's been good, like it's been fun, and it's been different. It's been an adjustment for sure, but it's also been like really eye-opening for me to say like, oh, I can do this, like I never thought I would. I never thought like I would end up here, but I have, and I am here, and let's see where it goes, right? And so I think like being able to accept yourself and to believe in yourself opens you up to so many more different possibilities, right? And so that's just something that I've been trying to work on and trying to learn and trying to grow in as we go along. But yeah, I think that's an important message for anybody.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, that's going to be a wrap on our episode. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. For all of you listening, if you guys need a therapist and you're up in New York City, go see my brother, Justin Ho. He's a great therapist, and I'm not just saying that because he's my brother. Check him out. And you can also check out all of our episodes and more on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, anywhere that you get your streaming platforms for podcasts. You can find us. All right. Peace.
Peace.